Hello everyone, my name is Jenna Gatmayton. For my portfolio project for the Introduction to the U.S. Healthcare System class, I chose the pharmaceutical industry as my healthcare sector. To understand how big the pharmaceutical industry is, a statistic I found is that in 2017, the pharmaceutical industry was worth $934.8 billion. With the industry's rapid growth, it is expected to reach $1.1 trillion by 2021. In this presentation, we will go over the historical development, the current role in healthcare delivery, the political influence, quality, safety, competition, the future challenges and issues, and some of my recommendations to fix the challenges. Historical development. Rules and regulations have formed after a series of unfortunate events. Acts and regulations have helped shape and set a foundation for the pharmaceutical industry as we know it today. When we think of the pharmaceutical industry today, we see innovative medicine, quality-controlled drugs, and high costs. However, we often do not reflect on the history on how it has become a unit. It started with the Import Drug Act of 1848. This act guaranteed that all imported medication must be inspected for quality, control, and safety. The Import Drug Act was enforced after the troops in the Mexican-American War grew ill from imported medicine. One of the first pharmaceutical companies in the United States was founded by two German immigrants. They rose to popularity as they supplied Union troops with medication. This company is what we know today as Pfizer. After a series of deaths from contaminated immunization vaccines, the Biologics Control Act of 1902 was created. The Biologics Control Act of 1902 enforced medicine to have proper manufacturing labeling. It has also put an end to an interstate transportation of adulterated medicines and food. Any drug that was contaminated could not be distributed or sold for a profit. Also, vaccines must come from an exclusive facility. The Biologics Control Act of 1902 has acted as a critical point to drug and food safety. 4 years later, Food and Drug Act of 1906 was created to ensure that labeling the ingredients must be mandatory before the distribution of a drug. The FDA still follows these guidelines and have become even stricter. 30 years later, the FDA was refined into the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. This took place after 100 people died after taking a compound drug. The Prescription Amendment Act of 1951. It was created to enforce that a doctor must prescribe major medications. This act was brought on to prevent a self-misdiagnosed disease. It potentially saved many lives. Prior to this act, any type of medicine was available to anybody. This was the start to over-the-counter drugs and prescriptions. The thalidomide scandal of 1961 happened in Western Europe. It caught the attention of the United States. Many babies were born with deformed limbs after pregnant mothers were told that the thalidomide drug was safe. However, it was not safe during pregnancy. After the scandal, The United States adopted the Kefauver-Harris Drug Amendment of 1962. It introduced a requirement for drug manufacturers to provide proof of the effectiveness and safety of their drugs before approval. Current role in healthcare delivery. Over the past century, the pharmaceutical industry has taken a gigantic leap from unregulated medicine to strict laws and regulations made by the FDA. The pharmaceutical industry plays a major role to healthcare. People rely on pharmaceutical companies to manufacture safe and effective drugs. People put trust that their pharmaceuticals are effective and safe for their consumer needs. The industry provides medicine for those living with chronic diseases. Patients rely on drugs to keep up with their health conditions. There is still more that needs to be discovered. With research and diagnostics, pharmaceutical companies are able to discover new cures and new medication to treat new or rare chronic diseases. New pharmaceuticals can save millions of lives. Political influence. Government regulations are guidelines that all companies must follow to ensure safety and effectiveness of medicine for consumers. Essentially, FDA regulations lengthen the process for bringing new pharmaceuticals to the market. New drugs go through lab tests and human trials. Medicine can take up to 10 to 15 years before being put on the market. The government gives an advantage to larger companies who are big enough to secure funding. Laws and regulations allow larger companies and smaller companies to team up and form mergers. Mergers and acquisitions benefit the smaller companies by receiving a financial boost and larger companies by giving them new profitable products. Orphan drugs are developed to treat rare medical conditions. They remain non-commercialized because they do not make a profit due to the rare cases. To keep companies intrigued with finding new cures, the government gives incentives. Incentives include quicker approval time and potential financial assistance for development. The government's aid to create orphan drugs expands the industry. Quality. Pharmaceutical companies have a special set of standards for quality. Guidelines from WHO, FDA, ICH, and EU are set to establish quality products for consumers. Many companies put an emphasis on inspecting for quality ingredients that are up to par with the standards. Also, quality work environments with updated equipment and technology must be up to date to follow the guidelines. Pharmaceutical companies have to identify and define what risk means for the company to implement a quality risk management program. They must recognize what needs to be improved to produce each product with the same high standards. Compliance training keeps employees updated with quality control safety handling. Safety. Pharmaceutical organizations are legally obligated to enforce and maintain workplace safety standards. Risk assessments are used to identify dangers and to prevent work-related injuries. To keep employee safety as a priority, companies monitor employees and correct any exposure to hazards. Labs are required to provide safety data sheets so that chemicals are supplied and used safely. Sheets inform proper labeling of all chemicals, proper handling of chemicals, and safe storage for all ingredients. Maintaining health and safety standards by continuous training are given to employees. Training classes provide employees with safety techniques of proper handling in the labs. Competition. Organizations use data and analytics to form models on drug prices and marketing strategies to compete with competition. Better products are advertised more intensively. New and thriving drugs are heavily advertised on television, magazine ads, and through social media. Advertising has a positive impact on prices. Companies with similar drugs have to compete against each other. They may lower their prices to gain the consumer's interest. Cheaper brand names or generic medication gain more profit due to consumers not being able to afford their copays. Prices are higher in markets where copays are lower. Companies raise prices of their products when insurance companies cover a majority of the costs. Although the copay may be a small portion, the pharmaceutical industry benefits from these copays. Future challenges and issues. In today's society, technology grows at a rapid speed. With the help of technology, pharmaceutical companies can collect data and analytics to improve drug quality. Technology also can create innovative advancements in the pharmaceutical industry. There is a potential for 3D printing drugs that could compete with the pharmaceutical companies. Technology may be a risk for the pharmaceutical industry. Technological advancements can improve the pharmaceutical industry. However, with many new innovative products, it may be hard to keep up with the improvements. Some forms of technology are trendy and expensive. If it fails, a pharmaceutical company could lose millions of dollars. There is also a potential for stolen information. Data stored in a cloud can be stolen from hackers. Pharmaceutical companies will have to invest in more cybersecurity rather than using the money to expand drug research. Increased competition of generic drugs. As healthcare costs rise, many Americans don't have the money to spend on name brand drugs. Instead, they revert to the generic drugs, which are a fraction of the cost. By law, they are required to have the same active ingredient as name brand drugs. Although name brand drugs have the rights to a 180-day exclusivity, customers rather wait for a cheaper alternative that comes to market. The opioid epidemic. Opioid manufacturers are being sued for increasing the amount of opioid addictions. These companies are urging doctors to overprescribe due to the large amount of supply and revenue. J&J is urged by the state of Oklahoma to pay $572.1 million for marketing their painkillers. Other pharmaceutical companies like Teva Pharmaceutical Industries and Endo International face similar lawsuits. There are over 2,500 filed lawsuits. The Oklahoma case was the first to go to trial. Recommendations. For technology, I'd recommend to be smart with tech machine investments. Collect data and analytics before deciding to incorporate a new product. Partner with reputable tech companies to compete with the competition in the pharmaceutical industry. Provide intensive training for staff when implementing a new tech product to prevent misuse. With having the edge of knowledge, employees can make well thought out decisions to prevent investing on fad technological equipment. Brand name versus generic drug solution. Patent time and speeding up the developmental process can be beneficial when cutting costs to the brand name drugs. The brand name drugs will have to spend less time and money on developing their drug, and this can cut costs when it comes to paying the employees and for the time being used in the lab. It can also, drugs often take years to develop based on time restrictions, and by speeding up the process, less money will be spent on a waiting period. Stopping the opioid crisis. Pharmaceutical companies can provide interventions and rehabilitation centers for those dealing with opioid addictions. By showing support to consumers, they can potentially correct a problem they are being sued for. Conclusion. Dating back to the mid 1800s, early laws and regulations have shaped the foundation for the pharmaceutical industry today. The FDA sets laws and regulations that ensures the quality, safety, and competition of new pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical industry makes medicine to improve the health of society. Although there are challenges faced, there is always new innovative technology to improve the industry.